Alright guys, this will be a quick video on Unit 2, Lesson 4, and what to expect for that lesson. To kick things off, we start up with a quick probing question. There are two on your worksheet, but the one we're going to really focus on is this. Do games have real-world physics in them, and what games have you played that actually support your answer? Once we've done that, we move into the agenda. So the agenda for today, we're going to talk about how to submit assignments in the class. We're going to talk about game object components and go over basic play interactions. The assignment for today is you're going to complete Module 1, and that module will be inside of Unit 2, Lesson 4 folder. Today is going to be all about basic play interaction. We're going to start with the basics you need for compelling play interaction inside of Unity. So first, let's talk about how to submit assignments. So whenever you submit any assignment for the class, you're going to be expected to export a Unity package containing the scene that you're currently working on. I'm going to go into what that means and how that works right now. So what we're going to do is you're going to go to the assignment in Unit 2, Lesson 2, or U2L4 inside of Unity. We're going to go to Assets and click Export Package. From there, we're going to tick the None in the pop-up window and scroll down until you see the Unity scene that you want to export. In our case, we're going to export U2L2 or Unit 2, Lesson 2, and tick that on. Then you click Export. And we'll go over that with you guys right now. So right now, I'm inside of Unity. And I'm going to go to Unit 2, Lesson 2. I'm just going to click and make sure everything's good here. So everything looks to be good. I have the code the way I want it to be. We're all good here. What I'm going to do from here, and I'm going to go up to the top where it says Assets, Export Package. And then I'm going to tick None because you see everything selected. I'm going to tick None. And I'm going to scroll down until I can find the folder I'm looking for. One way to make it easier is I'm going to hide a lot of the other stuff that I don't want to see. I don't want to see the assets folder. I just want a lesson activity, U2L2. Then you can click on this right here. Once I've done that, I'm going to click on export, like so. Now, the next step is you're going to go to your documents folder on your desktop, and you're going to name the file your first initial last name. So, sometimes your computer might look like this, where you see this PC and nothing else. Just double click it to expand it. Then go to your documents folder. From here, you can name it your first initial, last name. I'm going to do K Gordon, and then underscore U2L2, like that, and then save it. From there, the package will be exported and saved onto your documents folder. At that point, you can just go to your documents folder, find the package, and upload that package to Google Classroom. So that's how you export a Unity package. And just upload that to Google Classroom. Make sure you're good. You're going to upload this under Unit 2, Lesson 2, and you'll be good for that. After you finish that, we're going to move on to the rest of the lesson activity. So, let's talk about, like I said, submit it under Unit 2, Lesson 2. So let's talk about game object components. So, here's what you guys are going to do. You guys are going to explore different game objects and how the different components are the same and different across different types of assets. What you're going to do is you're going to locate a specific folder inside of Unity. The folder is going to be called Demo Assets. I have to rename mine here, but if you go to Unit 2, Lesson 4, this is going to be called Demo Assets, and you're going to double click in here. From there, you're just going to drag out these components, and you're going to take a note of how the inspector changes and what changes about each of the components, each of the different components. When you've done that, you're going to go to the worksheet for today. The worksheet for today, let me find it very quickly. I'll pull it up here. Well, I'll pull it up in a second, but you're going to go to the worksheet for today and fill out the next section that talks about game object components. Because we're really going to compare what do the objects have in common and what's different about them. After we finish that, and you've written down your notes, we're going to jump into this part, game object components. So, what's a game object component? A game object component is very simply the components that make up an object. So, as an example, whenever we first make a sprite, right, we have a transform component and a sprite render component. These are the two components that make up this object and allows us to see a sprite on the screen. We can add components to our game object to add functional or more functionality to it. One thing to note is that all game objects have a transform component. It doesn't matter what object you're using, it always has a transform component, and it's broken down as follows. Has the position or where the object is on the scene in the scene. Rotation is the rotation of that object, and scale is how big the object is. But all game objects have that component, and then the components vary depending on what type of object you are using. What we're going to do in this class, we're going to actually add components to our object to add functionality to it. We're going to start that today with the next section. But first, let me actually go over some default components. If we're looking at empty game object, it just has a transform component. 2D sprites have a transform component and a sprite renderer. If there's an animated 2D sprite, it has a transform component, sprite renderer, animator, so on and so forth. So like I said, it's going to be your job to add functionality to your game object and basically add components to your game object to enable your game object to be moved and interacted with in the game. Now let's talk about basic player interactions and how we can make this work. So to create any playable virtual interaction, you need the following two components: a rigid body component and a collider component. Rigid body basically controls gravity and physics, and colliders control whether or not an object is solid or not. There are two different versions of these components. There's the basic version, which is basically a 3D, rigid body 3D, and then there's the 2D component. Essentially, if you're working with 2D objects, you want to focus on using only 2D rigid body components and only 2D collider components. If you're working with a 3D object, you will use just like plain rigid body without 2D and plain 2D collider without 2D. What we're going to do, we're going to actually practice how to actually add components into our scene inside of Unity with this first module challenge. So I'm going to go here and show you what that looks like. I'm going to go here and double click on this right here. And don't need to save it. Boom. So we have a scene that looks like this, right? And I have a bunch of objects in here. I have my player object 1, player object 2. If I want to add a component, I'm just going to click add component and you can type in rigid body 2D. I'm going to add a rigid body 2D component to it. When I press the play button, you will see that the character falls down. But I actually don't want it to fall down. I actually want it to like hit an object right here, right? So the way that works is you're going to add a collider component. In the case, I add a box collider and see what happens when I run it, and it should hit the object. Like so. Awesome. So that's essentially how that works. What you want to do is you want to add a component to your other player so we can actually start making a Pong game. That's really it for this lesson. If you have any questions, let me know. And otherwise, see you in the next video.